welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into the fascinating and incredibly relevant world of consumer rights. It's a space where every single one of us plays a role, literally every day. Whether you're grabbing groceries, signing up for a new streaming service, or making a huge life purchase, you are a consumer. But honestly, how much power do you actually hold in those transactions? Well, let's find out. Let's start with the universal pain point, because we've all been there, right? I want you to think about a time you bought a defective product, or maybe you found sneaky hidden charges on a bill, or you just felt completely powerless against a massive corporate seller. Maybe a local shopkeeper weighed your vegetables inaccurately, or you bought an expensive appliance that was obviously made to fall apart after just a few months. It's incredibly frustrating, and that terrible feeling of helplessness, that is exactly why understanding this topic is absolutely crucial. To unpack how we can actually fight back, we're going to run through 5 key areas today: the unequal marketplace, the rise of the consumer, know your rights, the path to justice, and finally, becoming a smart consumer. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the unequal marketplace, or, as I like to call it, the classic David versus Goliath dynamic. Look, as individual buyers, we're usually pretty scattered and, on our own, relatively weak. But large producers, they've got immense wealth, immense power, and massive reach. And historically, this huge imbalance allowed companies to manipulate the market with almost zero consequences. For example, a company spent years aggressively selling powdered baby milk all over the world, flat out claiming it was better than mother's milk. It took years of intense struggle to finally force them to admit those claims were completely false. Or think about giant tobacco companies fighting relentless, drawn-out court battles just to deny that their products caused cancer. And on a more local level, we see informal moneylenders forcing vulnerable small farmers like Swapna to literally sell their own land just to pay back predatory loans. Moving into Section 2, rise of the consumer, and how we finally started shifting that balance of power. For the absolute longest time, the prevailing attitude was basically just buyer beware. If you didn't like what you bought, you were basically told to just go somewhere else. But through collective pushback, we've shifted to a modern reality where sellers legally bear the responsibility for the quality and safety of what they provide. That's a massive shift in mindset. And this doesn't happen overnight. In India, for example, the consumer movement really took root back in the 1960s out of pure necessity, sparked by rampant food shortages, hoarding, and black marketing. Then, a huge global milestone hit in 1985, when the UN officially adopted guidelines for consumer protection. This pushed nations into action, directly leading to India's landmark 1986 Consumer Protection Act, which we all know as COPRA. Fast forward a bit to 2019, and COPRA got a desperately needed update to finally hold businesses accountable in the digital era for things like internet buying. Which brings us to Section 3, know your rights. Let's dig into your legal arsenal. So what actual weapons did laws like COPRA hand us? Well, let's break down your specific rights. First up is the right to safety. This mandates that producers must strictly adhere to safety rules. When you buy something like a pressure cooker, it has a safety valve that, if it's defective, could literally cause a fatal explosion. This right ensures manufacturers maintain high quality, and crucially, it also extends to the delivery of critical services, like medical care. We unfortunately see exactly why this right is so critical through Reggie Matthews' heartbreaking story. Reggie was a perfectly healthy 9th grader admitted for a routine tonsil removal. But improper anesthesia ended up crippling him for life. It was a severe deficiency in service. But after a really long battle, the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission enforced his right to safety, held the hospital totally responsible for the medical negligence, and forced them to pay compensation. Next up is the right to information. Basically, you have the absolute right to know exactly what you're buying. You know, all that tiny text printed on medicine bottles or food packets? That is definitely not there by accident. Manufacturers are legally forced to display their ingredients, the maximum retail price, which, by the way, you can absolutely bargain down from, along with manufacturing dates, expiry dates, and any potential side effects. And honestly, this goes way beyond just packaged goods. In 2005, the Right to Information Act, or RTI, brilliantly expanded this power to cover government services too. Just look at Amrita's case. When government officials stonewalled her and refused to release the results of a job interview she'd attended, she didn't just give up. She used the RTI Act to legally force them to reveal the delayed results. And thanks to that, she successfully secured her job appointment. Then we've got the right to choice. This one protects you from those super annoying forced tie-in sales. Imagine a shop owner telling you they'll only sell you toothpaste if you also buy a toothbrush from them, or a gas dealer insisting you have to buy a brand new stove just to get a gas connection. No way. The right to choice explicitly protects you from being bullied into buying things you simply don't want. A great example of this is Abirami. She paid a hefty lump sum upfront for a 2-year coaching course, but decided to opt out after just 1 year because the teaching quality was terrible. When the institute flat out refused to refund her remaining fee, she took them to the District Consumer Commission. And guess what? The commission ruled in her favor, explicitly stating she had the fundamental right to choose. They forced the institute to hand back her money, and even slapped them with a fine for making a frivolous appeal. All right, on to Section 4, the path to justice. Because you have to know how to fight back. Having rights on paper is really only half the battle. How do you actually enforce them when a company crosses the line? Well, Copra set up a really smart 3-tier quasi-judicial system, and it's divided strictly by the financial value of your claim. If your dispute is for anything up to 1 crore rupees, you head to the district commission. If it's bigger, between 1 and 10 crore, you step up to the state commission. And for massive claims exceeding 10 crore rupees, you go straight to the national commission. Plus, if a lower commission dismisses your case, you always have the right to appeal upwards. To see how accessible this actually is, let's look at Prakash. Prakash sent a money order to his daughter for her wedding, but the money just completely vanished. Now, instead of just accepting it and grumbling about his bad luck, he took action. When the post office totally ignored him, he got some quick advice from a local consumer council. And then, without even needing to hire an expensive lawyer, he walked right into the district commission office, filled out a simple registration form, and formally pleaded his own case to get justice. And finally, Section 5, becoming a smart consumer. Proactive empowerment is the name of the game here. Look, the legal system is a fantastic safety net, but ideally, we want to avoid the courtroom entirely by just being proactive. And the easiest way to do that is to check for mandatory quality certifications. Get into the habit of looking for specific logos on packaging, like the ISI mark for industrial products, Ag mark for agricultural goods, or the Hallmark for jewelry. For a lot of everyday items, these aren't just polite suggestions. They're legally mandatory certifications for products that directly impact our health and safety, like LPG cylinders, food additives, and even cement. And as you embrace your new role as an empowered, savvy consumer, I want you to keep the number 24 in your head. December 24th is officially observed as National Consumers' Day in India. It marks the exact day the Indian Parliament enacted the Consumer Protection Act back in 1986, essentially laying the bedrock for every single right we've talked about today. But here is the reality check. The laws are undeniably powerful, and the infrastructure is definitely there, but the system isn't magical. The redressal process can still drag on, it can be cumbersome, sometimes expensive, and tracking down evidence like old cash memos can be a real headache. What this means is that your active voluntary participation and your sharp awareness before you even hand over your cash is absolutely vital to making the marketplace fair. So I want to leave you with this final thought today. This entire consumer movement was built on the backs of regular people who simply refuse to be exploited anymore. The tools to fight back, the courts, the legislation, and your rights, they are literally right there in your hands. So the next time you get cheated, overcharged, or totally dismissed by a seller, are you just going to walk away, or are you ready to assert your rights?